Hey viewers, this is Rizwan and welcome to this video conversation with Ghazala. Ghazala is the founder of the American Muslim Caucus, and today she's going to talk to us about the sentiments of the Indian community and the Muslim population in the United States about what they feel about presidential elections, what are their choices, and their expectations.
Thank you for having me on this talk show. I'm excited to be here. The Indian community, I think, is very excited. This is a very unique election. It's historical in many ways. As you may know, Indians make up about 1.5%, 1.4% of the US population. And out of that, 90% are basically Hindu community. And then the other 10% is a mix of Muslims, Christians, and Sikhs in the United States. Yes, we are, proud of our diversity and our heritage as Indians here in America. And I think currently with Kamala Harris on the Biden ticket, there's a lot of excitement in the Indian community because she's a diverse background, her own Indian heritage. I think, it's historical that we've never had a woman of color in this position before in this country. So that's exciting. And I think both, Hindus and Muslims all alike, I think people who are really fed up of the rhetoric, the hate mongering, the divisions that are being created here in this country by the current president are sick and tired of that. And they're doing everything they can to turn out people to vote, And so we're seeing historical numbers of people turning out to vote, as in comparison to 2016, we've already surpassed the number of people that voted in 2016 right now, and we're still like a few days away from the election. And lots of mail-in ballots have not been counted yet. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see what happens on November 3rd. And, it's highly unlikely that we will know the results right away on that day because there's so many mailed in vote by mail ballots that have to be counted. So it might take a few days, but we will see how that rolls out. But I think overall the community is very excited. And majority, I would say, are Democrats, are voting Democrat. But there are, a number of people who are still going to vote as Republican or will vote for Trump simply because they're more focused, I think, on the economy. They're just ignoring the moral and ethical factors, of someone like him in this leadership role, and basically just focusing on their pocketbook, and how it's going to save them economically or how it's going to empower them more economically. So those people, I think, will, they won't be so open, but there are many people that I'm surprised, like, within the Indian community, in a high income bracket that will be voting for Trump. So, everybody has a right to vote for who they want, but, that's really, those are the facts on the ground.
So, talking about who's going to vote for whom, it's a personal freedom. But still, what is the trend of the Indian community over there? What's their choice? And how are they excited about having an Indian heritage president in the future? I'm talking
Yeah.
about Kamala Harris.
Yes, I think that excitement is there, and I think definitely more people are turning out to vote for her, because she's on the ticket with Biden. So a majority, I would say, overwhelmingly will be voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and the campaign has done an amazing job of reaching out to Asians, Asian Pacific Islanders, the Indian community. We are seeing overwhelmingly, I think, since 2016 election, so many Indians who have been running for office on down-ballot races at local levels, which is really important because, when the federal government at that level, the government fails you, you really have to count on local government to be strong and have strong representatives, at every level of government. And so we've seen historical numbers of Indians, Muslims, and Hindus both running for office. And it's the same this year. We're seeing a lot of those folks running. And we already have, Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal, who are Indians who are in Congress, and they're doing an amazing job, representing the community, their own constituencies, and fighting for the values, democratic values of this country.
Well, just a speculation now. India is the largest democracy when it comes to population, and US is one of the oldest democracies. So there are two large democratic countries, uh, trying to develop a bilateral relationship, and there has been a progressive development in this regards. Now, keeping this as a scenario, what I'm speculating is how exciting it is for the Indian community to look into the future and see that you have an American president, a woman president with an Indian heritage. I mean, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, India has been ahead of that curve, right? We've had Indira Gandhi as our prime minister and many parliamentary members who are women and at all different levels in Indian government that are. So this will be historical for the United States. And how amazing would that be if that glass ceiling is broken by a woman of Indian heritage, that would be awesome. But at the same time, I think we have to remember when we're developing these bilateral relationships that we don't compromise our democratic values, both here as well as in India, because, since Narendra Modi's election in 2014 and here after Donald Trump's election, there is, I feel like the minority communities are underrepresented in both these governments, right? And so there's a strong, following, like whatever happens in the US and the rhetoric that is heard from here is kind of emboldens countries like India to go ahead with their own biases and discrimination in their country. So I think that, the US government has to be strong, remain strong in demanding human rights values be maintained in India, right? And so minorities, we cannot develop trade agreements or bilateral agreements or any kind of agreements at the expense of human rights of minority communities. And that's just not the Muslim community, it's the Christian community, the Sikh community, everybody in India, right? So I think that has to be front and center, and we have to stand up and fight for those values.
So, Ghazala, now, again, another speculation. Uh, if the Democrats win and you have Biden as the president, then how do you see a bilateral trade and relationships progressing between India and the US? And how will the MSME sector be affected? Because that's actually the core sector. That's where the business actually happens.
Right. When you say MSME, can you?
Small and medium enterprises.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm
So
referring
it's
to
the
startups.
IT.
Yes. No. It could be any kind of a business, which is a startup. It could be logistics, engineering, science. It could be into defense or retail. There's a lot of
Right.
collaboration happening. IT is one of the major sectors that India is involved in with the US. But then there are so many other things in life and business verticals that the two countries can explore. So with regards to people shifting their base from high profile jobs to their own businesses, becoming giving more preferences to startups. So what kind of environment or collaborations do you see between Indians and the US with reference to these startups that are there in the market and that are expected to come up?
Yeah, I think it would open up a lot of opportunities, with the Biden government. I know with the Trump administration, there's been like lots of restrictions in terms of visas and who can come in, who cannot come in, with all of these bans and, all these restrictions on immigration and just going backwards in terms of immigration. And I think those policies will improve under Biden. And yeah, I think all of those opportunities are there, but still, the one thing that for me as a human rights activist and someone who is always advocating for an equitable democracy, it would be like all of those things can happen as long as, there's respect for human rights in India. And so far we haven't seen that, right? India has started like these new programs with the citizen proving your citizenship. I mean, Muslims have lived there for centuries, and especially if you go into the rural areas and the villages, where these people don't have any records, it's very difficult for some of these folks, to kind of produce their documents and show. And it's not just Muslims, it's in every community. That's just the culture of the country. And so openly discriminating against Muslims and not giving them the same access to immigration and citizenship as they would for other minorities who are non-Muslims that are in India is very harsh, and that's an open bias of the government. And so we can't turn a blind eye to things like that. And I think wherever there are opportunities for economic opportunities for India, bilateral agreements, trade agreements, business arrangements, all of these things, but at the top of it also has to be the value for human life and human rights. And I think as long as I feel and I believe that Biden will be advocating for those rights and values. He's just not going to ignore those things and just sign on whatever and make agreements just blindly without those factors. And I know that there's both, there's two sides here in the US. We see a split with the Indian community. One community who is growingly more supportive of the Hindu nationalist movement. And then there's one community that is for, for human rights values and equity and justice for all. India is, like you mentioned before, it's the biggest democracy, largest democracy in the world. But how much does religion factor into the influence of Indian democracy? And, is it really an equitable and just democracy? So there's lots of questions there around what does democracy really mean? And who, based on whose opinion and who is looking at it. But overall, I think that those two factions are here in this country. There's a growing number of Hindus who are supporting the Modi government. And I know while Modi government is maybe good in terms of economy in India, improving the economy, supporting the economic situations and all of those things, but at the same time, I think they have dropped the ball. They've never come out and condemned any of these groups, who have consistently discriminated, committed violence, killed and massacred Muslim communities. They don't talk about it, they just ignore it. And I don't think that is acceptable or should be acceptable by the US government.
Well, thank you, Ghazala, for this piece of conversation. It was really interesting.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you again.